All right, did everybody survive playing four-way dodgeball? No?
They gave up on me.
All right, how about the clip game? Did anybody in here win the clip game? Middle schoolers?
It was a conspiracy.
It was a conspiracy? Oh! The Russians did it, yes. That's super important. I don't know, I think it's just easy.
Wasn't me, I didn't take it. I really didn't know who, like, actually put them in their back.
All right. Well, guys, tonight is night 3, the final night of Walking Wisely. You can cheer for that, you can cry. I don't know what your personal choice is. But before we jump into tonight, I gotta know. All right, how many of y'all? This is my favorite question to ask any Walking Wisely, because I used to be in y'all's shoes. How many of y'all got 0 to 1 hour of sleep? Show of hands. Oh, man, I got a few in here. All right, how many of y'all got like 2 to 4 hours of sleep? Some of the leaders' hands are going up now. All right. How many of y'all got between 5 and a full night's beauty sleep? 8 hours? Yeah, in the back. All right. Leaders, are we feeling okay? Are we caffeinated up? We got some coffee and some Mountain Dew? All right, that's awesome. All right, what was y'all's favorite thing? I heard that some of y'all went and got some jewelry in St. Augustine. Guys, right? Y'all got some jewelry?
Yeah.
All right, how's the girls? How's the jewelry? No? I see yours. Yeah, it's right on top of your head.
All people.
Oh, there it is right there. We got a leader West jewelry. All right. And you guys served. Hey, real quick. I just want to say that is awesome to hear that a youth group went out and served with the homeless, correct?
Yep.
Yeah, served with the homeless in your community. We didn't, I haven't heard of a whole lot of that back from where I came from in Atlanta. We had churches doing it, just not usually during a student weekend. And so I just want to commend you guys for going out there and being above and beyond and really exemplifying what God is doing through your guys' youth group. So tonight we have a really simple theme. We're still in the theme of in the making. And last night we talked about that, how you need to treat now like it matters now. And this morning you guys talked some more about David. And so tonight, our kind of sub-theme as we wrap this whole thing up is literally one word. And it's 3 letters. It's really easy, okay? When I say it, just say it back to me. All right. The word is yes. Hey, why are you jumping in, man?
It's the best word in the world.
Yes, it is, right? Who loves to hear the word yes?
Yes.
Yeah, I love hearing the word yes. Man, maybe we love hearing yes when it comes to hanging out with friends. Or maybe it's you heard yes to go play on the sports team. One of my favorite yeses is when I ask to go eat some Chick-fil-A. And I got lucky tonight. We were getting ready to leave to come here, and my wife was like, "Hey, what you want for dinner?" And I was like, Chick-fil-A sounds kind of nice. She mentioned it. She was like, "No, Chick-fil-A is on the way." I was like, "Yeah, I know Chick-fil-A." She goes, "Yes." And I was like, "Oh, yes, the Lord's chicken." So we got some Chick-fil-A, man. I love to hear the word yes. Or maybe you like saying yes. Maybe you're just one of those people who you're like, if I could say yes over no, I'm gonna say yes. Yes is so much better than no. Okay, maybe not all of you. That's fine. Hey, listen. No matter what, whether you're the one that gives the yes or receives the yes, one of our favorite words to hear is yes. We would so much rather hear yes than no as we go throughout our lives. And it's because that's what our theme is. It's what we're going to be focusing on. And I think it's time that we take some time looking at one of the most important yeses you can give. So we're going to do that by once again looking at our guy, David. Okay? And there were some pretty big yeses that David gave throughout his life. And they were all a part of who God was making him to be. Whether he, again, kind of saw it or didn't see it with what he was going through. So I'm going to talk about David for a while now. But for those of you who were sleeping this morning because you stayed up all night drinking 3 Mountain Dews, eating Little Debbie's and whatever else is, y'all, I don't know what you're talking about. He literally pulls it. He's like, I have it right here. All right. And some of y'all were obviously so tired from staying up all night last night that you're actually here in your pajamas from last night. So I'm feeling it. Listen, I see it. I've seen it all before. Julie and I, we can tell you crazy horror stories from our times of Walking Wisely. But we're going to talk about David. So quick recap about David. Remember, he starts off as a young shepherd boy, right? About your age. He was watching those stinky sheep, had to fight off the lions, had to fight off the bears. Unknown. Nobody would have cared about him. And then all of a sudden, it was like one day he went and he like heard Goliath, and he's like, man, what the heck? And he got offended on God's behalf, was like, I'm going to take him out. Got his stones, got his sling, and he took down Goliath, right? We're like, man, David's a hero. This is so awesome. And so what's even cooler is that David is part of the lineage that leads to Jesus. David is Jesus' like great, some other greats, some math stuff, great grandpa, okay? Like David is all the way down that line. So he's super important. And this morning, you guys talked about the fact that David also made some really big mistakes. Like, David was totally not perfect. He messed things up. He tried to keep them hidden. Then he was called out for keeping them hidden. And then he repented. And David was a lot, okay? If you read his story, there's a lot more going on this week I'll talk about this morning. But David made mistakes. He was so not perfect. But what's cool is that he was being worked on by God. And he would come down and be like, God, I messed up. I need some forgiveness. And God would give him that forgiveness. And God kept working on him and was bringing him to who he was making him to be. Because what I understand about David, what's so cool about David, is throughout all of his life, God was super involved. He helped him, he fought for him, he paid attention to him, man, he made stuff happen for him. You think that stone just instantly? No, there was some like Holy Spirit on that stone. I couldn't sling a stone like that. I tried, you try to sling a shot in the backyard, like, come on, brother. Just kidding. But seriously, so he's got all this, he's got all of that going for him, and it sounds awesome. Like if we knew where to sign up to get some of that, I think we'd all be there, right? We'd be like, yes, God, please do all of these things for me like you did for David. But I think what happens is it doesn't seem that easy. And we find ourselves wondering, does God even notice me? Like, does he even notice me? Does he really care about who I am? And how would I get him to notice me? And so what's special about David and why God chose David and all these things and it wasn't because he was super religious or that he was really cool, that he had the right shoes on, or his mama was just super caring and got him to the right school. No, none of that is why God paid attention to David. Because it was not anything other than David just saying our theme. He just said yes. David would say yes to God. And so the reason why I know this is because there's a passage in the Bible that talks about this. So you see, we talked about David's story in the Old Testament. We talked about that was a really big fat part. Sorry, the sign fell. It may not stay up great tonight. We're going to work on it. It'll be okay. We'll put it down here. So we're talking about the Old Testament. There's actually a passage in the New Testament. I know that's a little weird because David lived way before it was written. But there's this passage in the New Testament by this guy named Paul. If you haven't heard of Paul, quick fun fact, Paul wrote most of the New Testament. Super brilliant guy. God met him on this road, blinded him literally, sent him through all his trials, and then Paul was like, behold, I write lots of things. And he's very smart, a little bit arrogant, just my personal opinion. But he writes a lot, okay? And so Paul is in the book of Acts, Paul is talking to the church, and he's kind of giving this like history lesson. He's like, hey, let's start back with Moses. Let's talk about, and of course all the Israelites are like, bro, we know Moses. Gosh, what do you have to say now? And so Paul's like, just bear with me. And so he's got this seminar, and he's talking about, he gets up to David. And so it makes sense because you can't really tell the history of Jesus without the story of David. But here's what Paul says about David that gives us insight into what specifically made David stand out. So God testified concerning him. Now real quick, and I was about this today as I was looking over this and I was studying and I was thinking, I would want my personal goal, and I'm nowhere near perfect. I have lots of issues, and so do all of we. But I would hope that through following God, by the end of my life, or even when someone looks back at my life in history, that I can say that God, who's perfect, who created me, who loves me, who's in heaven, can testify, can say something about me. And say something about me that's positive, not like, this dude was an idiot and got himself killed, okay? There's a few people in the Bible where that's how they're known, is like, this dude did not listen to God and he got smited for it. But no, this was, God testified positive. Listen to this. He says, I have found David, son of Jesse, a man after my own heart. He will do everything I want him to do. The thing that set David apart wasn't his intellect, it wasn't his strength, wasn't how much he could rep on the weights, or how much he could play Fortnite, or maybe it was his school grades. No, the thing that set David apart was the fact that he was chasing God. He was a man after God's own heart. And that is what got God's attention. So what does that mean? First, real quick, this doesn't mean that he was chasing God's physical heart. That's a little weird and honestly kind of impossible to do. If I could actually look at God's physical heart, I'd probably get crushed by it. Because it's just so awesome. And he's huge. He's everywhere, literally. So it doesn't mean physically. What Paul is talking about is that David was after the things that mattered most to God. He was after what was important to God's heart. I know. Whoa, sign. We love signs. Not what God could give him or do for him, but simply who God was to him. Similarly, I think we do this often with parents occasionally. Like, I love my mom. I'm not always trying to do things just to impress her. I do things for my mom because of how much she means to me. Because I love her. And this is the way that David was modeling himself after God. It wasn't, what can you do for me, God? It's, you are so awesome to me that I want to chase after the things that honor you, that are so important to you. That's his entire life was about God's heart, the things that mattered to him most. And it motivated everything that David did. Because every single yes David said to God was because he wanted his life to be about what was important to God the most. And that's the heart of God. Now let's pause and be honest. This sounds great for David, but this isn't reality for a lot of us. A lot of us, we like our heart. We like things to go our way. Right? In fact, if this verse was kind of written using our names, like for me, the way that verse was written is, I have found Justin, the son of Bill, a student, or in this case, a man, because I'm like not quite the old student. I'm a college student though, so a college student after his own heart. Right? I think most of us in the room would feel this way, where that's the thing we're chasing is our heart. We're after what we want, what we think is important, what matters the most to us. And maybe that works for a while. For a while, you're getting your way. You're like, yeah, sports is the most important thing because it lifts me up. So you go out there and you're running. And now you're like the track star and you're like, hey, everybody look at me. I don't know if track's even that important to you guys, but it came on my mind. Right? But we're chasing these things, or maybe it's that girlfriend. You're like, I get that girl to go out with me. I'll be cool for everybody at school. And for a little while at work, you're like, hey, I'm cool. So there's that one new student that transfers in. You know how it goes. And all of a sudden, we're like, why? Now they're important. And then we're always looking at them, and now you're no longer satisfied. Our own heart always leaves us wanting more. But at the same time, occasionally in our lives, we run into God's heart. You guys go to church on Sunday, you're hearing him sung about, pastors preaching. If you podcast and you're really intelligent, you're like, I listen to these podcasts by pastors. You're like, man, that's really cool. Like, you run into God's heart. Maybe you even read your Bible in the morning. Great habit for the record. And you run into God's heart that way. And so sometimes we run into God's heart. And that's great. And over time we can understand the things that are important to him. That are important to the heart of God. And maybe all these things spark something in us. And they make us wonder, do I want to keep living life from my heart? Or do I want to live it for God's heart? What's most important to me? And so all of us, I think, are in this place. We either have been, maybe we're still in it now. And we kind of have to ask ourselves, what's most important to me? Do I want to chase after God's heart? Or do I want to chase after my own heart? Excuse me. In fact, we know we're stuck between our heart and God's when our yes to God is limited. It's like I'll do it, but if I can still have, but maybe if I have this. Or maybe we treat the Bible like a buffet. I know I've done this occasionally where it's like, I really like what it says here when it tells me I'm loved. I don't like this part when it calls out my sin. We kind of just nitpick things, and we just treat it like a buffet, and we don't treat the whole thing how we should be. Only move to God's heart when it's comfortable. Yeah, I'll go to Access on Sundays. Oh, you want me to go to camp? And leave my Xbox at home alone where Jimmy, my younger brother, can get to it? I don't. They're going to be talking about what? Nah, man, I don't. It's comfortable when it's on my terms. It ain't as comfortable when it's not, maybe not. And so we get stuck in this balance. And we try to do this. And so maybe that's where we're at, is we're at teeter-totter. Or maybe some of us tonight, we're just fully like, no, I'm good. I like what I'm doing. I like my heart. I love where I'm at. Serving me is great. Great stuff right there. And some of you, guys, some of you might be like totally like, no, God's heart is what I want. I'm chasing this 110%. This is what I want. I'm all in for Jesus. I'm all in for God. That's what I'm going after. And so we might have that dichotomy going on. But I think most of us are content to live right in between. With just enough of God's heart to feel good, with just enough of our own heart to feel comfortable. And so we're kind of doing this delicate act right here. Because this is where we like to stay. And I actually believe a lot of American Christians especially, is right where it's comfortable. Got enough of the world. Hey, Bachelor looks great. Oh, gotta read my Bible. Hold on. Wait, binge Netflix. Oh, man, I should probably do schoolwork. And we start doing this. Take a little bit here. I go to church on Sunday, but I like hanging out with this person. Maybe I read my word or I listen to some worship music, but I'm looking at this thing on the internet. Wait, but I'm in a small group. Ooh, but I'm hanging out with these friends. And we like to stay right in the middle, where it's enough of this and enough of this that we're comfortable and we're lukewarm. And that's between David and us. Because see, David wasn't doing this. He wasn't like, I love God, but I love Philistines. No. David was sold out. He was running. God was like, David, yeah, Lord, hey, watch these sheep. Yes, Lord, I'm going to watch these sheep. Gave it his all. We talked about last night, where you're just getting all in, not halfway. David, yes, Lord, go slay Goliath. Okay, God, I'm going to go slay Goliath. And he runs and slays Goliath. David, yes, Lord, can you just send me a DM, bro? David, yes, lead my people. Okay, God, I'll be the king for your people. And David was sold out, and he was chasing after God's heart. Unlike what a lot of us, including myself, some of your leaders, we have moments we're human. And David had his moments too, like I talked about last night. Because we know David was not perfect. Right? He had moments where he was like, I like my own heart. I see Bathsheba. She's cute. Wait, she got a hut. Can we kill him real quick? Front lines, let's go. Send him. It's fine. And eventually Nathan had to come along. Nathan's like, David, you're an idiot. You broke God's law. How do you know? But he got back to God's heart in the end. David was sold out. He was called a man after God's own heart. Now, like I said, we know he didn't always do the right thing. But we do know that David said yes to God while he was still in the making. And that yes then came another yes, then turned into another yes, and the next one, and it changed the course of David's life. Think about it. He went from a shepherd boy. Also, he was like the youngest of like 9 sons, 9 children. I don't know about y'all, but the youngest usually don't get picked for a whole lot. Some of you youngest kids are like, hey, he's preaching. Like, I get it. I'm the oldest though, so I mean,
I don't care.
I'm just kidding. Anyway, but listen, like he's the youngest and a shepherd boy. And because of his constant yeses, his constant obedience, he got to be the king of Israel. That's a huge responsibility. And when you and I get the opportunity and we say, yes, God, I'm not saying be blessed as a king, you're not going to become the next president, maybe, hey, run for it if you'd like to. We need some young people in that running. But God's going to bless you. It's not always going to be easy, and it's not always rainbows, but it's always worth it to be following solely after God's heart. So think about it this way. So for those of us that are kind of like, man, I like what this looks like, but I really like how comfortable this is. So, how many of y'all have been on a diving board? You know, like going into a pool? Okay, yeah. So I was at a camp one time, and it wasn't quite a diving board. Actually, we called it the jump-off tower. And it was on a lake. And they had a 10-foot platform that all like the young kids did. And then they had the 20-foot platform. And so me and my friends were like, we're going to do the 20-foot. Oh, yeah. And so I climb up there, I'm like, yeah, 20 foot, 20 foot. I get all the way to the top, and I look down, and I go, oh, my heavens. And it was like, you know, usually with like lakes, you see a little bit of that ripple. And you're like, oh, yeah, there's some waves. And at 20 feet, it just looks like this floor. You're like, it's very flat. This looks very scary. And this is how it can be going after God's heart. We try to be right on the edge of going, I want it kind of halfway. But when it comes to God's heart, you can't do it halfway. You have to jump all in. And like I did, because there wasn't backing down. In fact, they at that point had been yelling at me to jump off. Because I'd been up there for like 5 minutes and had frozen to my... I was like this. I was like, please, I don't want to jump. So I eventually jumped. It was a lot of fun. I didn't break anything. It was great. But that's how we got to be with God's heart. We have to jump in. We've got to commit. And a lot of us are on the edge when it comes to God. We don't want to make that leap. We want it halfway. We want a way to follow his heart while still having it our own way. So David, though, he was different. Like I said, he ran all the way after it. He actually jumped in. And he decided at some point that what God wanted was what he wanted. And that was what was most important to him. Regardless of what it would cost himself. And there will be a cost. I'm not going to sugarcoat this with you guys. There is always a cost to following Jesus. But when I say that cost, it's nothing compared to the worthwhile life you will have chasing Jesus. I mean it. You may be made fun of at school. It's going to happen. Jesus actually warns you of this. If you read your Bible, he's like, hey, they're going to make fun of you. Follow me. But it's worth it. And you keep following him, and eventually your friends are kind of like, okay, this dude's different. And they're gonna start coming along with you like, hey, what's this Jesus thing? Why is he always happy when like things are crashing down around you? Man, what's this joy you've got? And the more and more you chase God's heart, yeah, you might not be hanging out with certain friends, but now you got some really healthy friends who are helping you walk through life. It's worth it. It's worth it to chase for God's heart. Even David had some of those friends. And when he messed up, because David didn't mess up. And he turned to God for forgiveness. We do the same thing. It's so cool that we can immediately turn to God and have that conversation like, man, I screwed up. I wanted this, and I shouldn't have. And he's like, it's okay. I forgive you, and resets us on a course for God's heart. Because no matter what happened, David had already decided that's what he wanted. He was going to follow God's heart. So let's imagine that we take a page from David's story and we say yes to God's heart. What might be possible for our lives? What might be in the making for you when you decide to say yes to God? Here's what I want you to remember today. Go after God's heart. Because the moment you make them to trust Jesus as the one who died on the cross to make a way for you to become a part of God's family, he's asking you to know him. And you'll get to be a part of that family. You become a person who is after God's heart. And your sin, here's why it's so important to chase after God. Because your sin no longer stands in the way of you following God. And real quick, I know sin is kind of like a churchy word, right? Like, oh, sin, ew, what does that mean? Sin is really just anything that you do wrong that separates you from God. Actually, it means missing the mark. And unfortunately, we've all done this. Every single one of us in here have sinned in some way or another. We've all, man, you're saying, we've all done it. Talk to your small group leaders, they'll let you know. We've all done it. It's the mistakes we make. It's these things that we do that we know we shouldn't be doing that miss that mark. But see, Jesus died on the cross to save us from our sins, to restore us back to God. And in doing this, he took away the power from sin in our lives. You see, sin has a grip. It can very much have a grip. And it likes this right here. It likes our heart. Sin loves our heart. It says, yeah, keep feeding yourself that filth. Tastes good, doesn't it? And it's great for a season. And the Bible tells us, man, this is fun for a season. Fortunately, about a season is not eternity. And eventually that season ends, and the consequences of how you fed your heart catch up with you. So sin has its grip, but when God saves us, he breaks that grip. He says, man, I don't want you living like that. And he gives you this freedom. And he actually gives you the power of Jesus. He's like, hey, you see the way my son lived? Perfectly? I want you to experience some of that. You see that joy he had in tribulation? You see that peace he had? I want you to experience some of that. And it breaks that for us. It breaks the grip of sin and gives us that power of Jesus so that we can be fully committed to chasing after God's heart. And now, when we're chasing after God's heart, we're going to be defined by all the wrong things we did. Instead, we're defined by the grace of Jesus. And that we love God. That becomes our new identity. Become part of the family of God. And then we are free to go after God's heart. See, God wants us to be free from the weight of sin so we can be who he intends for us to be. Sin will keep you from God's plan. That's its goal, is to keep you from God's plan. It loves that because our hearts aren't always lining up with what God's plan is. Right? Like our heart, like I'll tell you, real personal, real quick. Like when I was in high school, my heart said, Justin, you're going to be an actor. God said, bro, no, you ain't. Have you seen yourself? So I no longer am chasing being an actor. I loved it while I did it in high school, but I no longer do that. But that's the thing is, I eventually was like, all right, I can't go where I want to go. And I surrendered, and I ended up at a church, and through that, I'm slowly finding my way to where God is making me to be, where he is taking me on my journey. And so he wants us to be free. Freedom from shame, we make those wrong decisions. Freedom from the distance that sin puts between us and God. Because it does slowly, like you think it's a small sin, and then it's another small sin, and it's another sin, and eventually God's up here, and you're here, and you're like, I don't know how I got so far away from you. And God didn't move. And it's all that sin that we have built up between us. But when we turn it over, we get right back, and we're close again. And receiving this freedom is a process. It is, we like to call it sanctification. That's the big, fancy church word. Which really is just, we're working on submitting ourselves to Jesus one day at a time. It's more than the yes you may have made at a camp last year, or continual yeses that you've done over time. Instead, it's growing into who Jesus says we are. It's learning that our lives look like how Jesus lived, and what Jesus says that our lives can be. It's a constant decision to go after God's heart. And maybe you've not given this much thought before. Maybe this is all brand new to you tonight. But now it kind of makes sense. Maybe some of you are ready to say that first yes to God. And that's awesome. We want to encourage that. And honestly, if that is you, let your small group leader know. I'm going to give you a chance there tonight to kind of let them know that this is your opportunity to say yes to God for the first time tonight. Or maybe you said a prayer in the past. You've made that commitment. You said, yeah, I want to follow Jesus, but you kind of fallen off the horse. And we all do. Tonight's a great night to kind of recommit and go, no, I really want to go after God's heart. I'm tired of following my own heart. And so tonight, maybe you just ask God to help you take one step closer to it. And pray that he continue to set you free as you put your trust in him. Praying a prayer to put your trust in Jesus is awesome, but don't stop there. Go after God's heart. Go after it. Run after it. Be like David. Sprint after it. So I want to offer these two invitations tonight. So everybody, heads closed. Heads bowed, eyes closed. I always mess that up.
The head's always closed.
That's true. Heads bowed, eyes closed. Everybody. Who's you, buddy? Heads bowed, eyes closed. All right. Small group leaders, can I ask you guys to stand up, if you don't mind? All right. So students, keep your eyes closed and heads bowed. All right, students. My first invitation for you tonight is perhaps some of you have never said that first yes to Jesus. You've never surrendered your life. You've never said, I want to be free from sin. I just want to tell you again that the gospel is really easy and simple. Jesus came for you because he loved you, and he wants to restore you to his family and to set you free from sin. And so tonight, if you want to get saved, you want that first decision to say yes, all I'm going to ask you to do is just to look up at your small group leader. All this does is just lets them know that they need to have a conversation with you, and you guys can talk through that and work through that however you need to, ask any silly questions or important questions. There are no wrong questions when it comes to this conversation. This is for those of you who want to say that first yes. All right, you can bow your heads again and close your eyes. My second invitation is this. Maybe you said yes, but somewhere along the way you have fallen off. You said, hey, my heart looks really great. I want to keep following my heart. And tonight you're realizing, I don't like where my heart's taking me. And so tonight you would like to recommit. And that doesn't mean you're getting saved again. That honestly just means that you want some accountability and some help chasing after God's heart. And if that's you, I'd ask you to look at your small group leader. This just lets them know to have a conversation, and they can help you. That's what they're here for. The small group leaders in this room are here to help you as you walk through your faith journey. All right, you can bow your heads and close your eyes. So I'm going to pray, and then I've got one question for you guys to take a small group. Dear God, I thank you so much for tonight. I thank you for these students, and I thank you that we got to talk about saying yes to you. Saying no to ourselves, but saying yes to the freedom that comes through as we chase after the freedom that you give us from sin. I pray that these students tonight would have awesome conversations. I pray they would never forget this walking wisely. I pray that it would impact their lives and change them and set them on a course to see what they're in the making to be, what you want them to be, where you are taking them, God. I pray all these things in your name. Thank you for loving us. Amen. All right, as you go to small groups, your question is, what yes do I want to say to God